talking all about how much business insurance costs, or how much is it supposed to cost? How much can you expect it to run? Well, first of all, of course, it depends on where you shop, right? You have to shop this around. It'd be like asking how much groceries cost to somebody who only shops at Erewhon or Whole Foods, right? They're going to give you a much different price than other people. So I highly recommend trying to work with a business insurance agent who can then go around and get you a couple of different quotes from a couple of different policies. And really, it's their job and their incentive to try to find you the best thing, because they want you to remain their customer and continue to come back to them for insurance. So I always like that as a little inside tip. The next thing that really influences how much your business insurance costs is how much liability or exposure you have as a business, as a person, all kinds of things. So the more, exposure you have, the higher the liability that an insurance company sees your work as having, the higher your premiums are going to be. So based on your liability and exposure, that's what's really going to dictate a lot of the price. And a lot of that is set outside of your control. Like if a insurance company thinks that what you're doing is quote unquote risky, meaning that they're exposing themselves more to having to pay out, your prices are going to be higher. Right. So some of the things that play into what they consider for your liability or exposure are how much revenue you make, right? Because that's another thing. It's like if you make a lot in revenue, then, you are technically taking on more risk because there are more transactions. You're working with more people who then might expose you to liability. It also depends on the type of work you do, of course, as I imagine. Like if you're a surgeon and you're removing things from people's body, that's going to be more expensive than if you're a gardening coach, right? So it really depends on what you do. Now, another thing that impacts the price of your business insurance is liability limits. Like I mentioned, that's how much they'll pay. The higher the limits, the higher the price it's going to be for you, right? Because they're going to be on the hook for more money. The deductible works kind of the other way. So with your deductible, which is again the amount that you owe in the event something happens, in the event that the insurance company has to pay somebody out, the higher the deductible is, the lower your premiums will be, right? So they will give you, in exchange for you having a high deductible, you can pay lower premiums. This is really just like a risk analysis that you have to do. I can't tell you what's the best. There is no best or right or wrong answer here. Because if, something happens, you just have to know how much your deductible is so that you know how much you have to pay. If you're willing to take on that risk of having it be higher, then you'll be able to pay lower premiums in the meantime. It's kind of like car insurance, where you can get a really high deductible car insurance plan, but then if something happens, you get stuck in that thing where you're like, well, do I pay it or like just pay for the damage myself because I don't want to put it on my insurance? In business, though, these cases tend to be more expensive. We're not just talking about repairing a car. We're talking about having to hire an attorney, having to maybe pay out some sort of settlement, or if they actually sue you, that's going to be a lot of money. So it's just what you're comfortable with, and it's really just something you have to take into consideration. This, though, the deductible is probably, that and the liability and exposure are probably the greatest factors that are going to impact the cost of your business insurance. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you're asking me to give a range, every day in our Facebook community for the Ultimate Bundle, my signature program that gives people 13 DIY legal templates, trainings, access to community support, lifetime updates, and all that, lifetime of the program updates, I always get asked, how much can I expect? Like, can you just tell me a price, right? We have people in the bundle who pay anywhere from a few $100s to a couple of thousands of dollars per year. And again, you can pay those in installments. It really, really depends. So like you can expect anything from a couple of $100s for the year to a couple of $1,000s. I think as you go along, I think the thousands thing is probably not off the bat. I think we're probably talking $400, $600, $800 maybe for the year, maybe $1,000 for the year. That would probably be the upper limit that I can think of. But it really depends because first of all, the insurance industry is changing, right? It's catching up to what we're doing. As there are more and more incidents in our industry, they're going to obviously increase the price because if the risk is going higher, they're going to increase the prices. There are all kinds of things. And it always depends, when people ask me this question, I'm like, well, what did you make the deductible or what are their policy limits? Another thing we haven't talked about is really what's covered, right? So sometimes people will post and be like, what, you're paying $600? I got one for $200 a year. And my alarm bells always go off because I'm like, what does that policy cover? What is the deductible? What does it cover? It's not just about the liability limit. If something's not covered by your policy, Or better yet, if something's excluded by your policy, a lot of people don't look at the exclusions in the endorsement section. Look at what is excluded in your policy. Are they excluding things outright that you do, that are probably the things that are the most likely that you would get sued for, right? Then your like $200, $300 insurance policy is like worthless, right? So I'd rather pay a little bit more to make sure that what I'm actually doing, the way I'm actually working with people, is covered. So those are, I think, the best things that you can have in mind going into any sort of price research, looking into which insurance policy is best for you, or shopping around. If you're listening to this and you already have business insurance and now you're like, wait, I didn't know that I have a $5,000 deductible. That's not really that helpful to me. Now you hopefully are armed with the information you need to go around and find the best policy for you. You can learn more about legally protecting your business and take my free legal workshop, 5 Steps to Legally Protect and Grow Your Online Business at samvanderwielen.com. And to stay connected and follow along, follow me on Instagram at Sam Vander Wielen and send me a DM to say hi.